And welcome to Maynard Costerisan's CPE for Lunch series. Today's topic is on manufacturing in D365 Business Central. I'm your host, Kate Watts, and your presenter and Business Central expert is Tom Jablonski. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and let Tom take over and give you a great intro into the presentation today. Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're here to talk about manufacturing inside of Business Central. But I'm going to start out in a more generic screen, and then I will switch over to a more production-oriented screen. So inside of Business Central, we've got all sorts of different role centers that you can take advantage of. This one is set up to be a business manager, and it's going to ferret out a whole lot of information at your fingertips as you come into the system. Generally, it'll welcome you with the information that comes in here with these insights from last week. And then it's also going to show you some key sales information, things like that. We have some cues down here, which help you also kind of be alerted to some of their information going on. So again, if you had sales this month that you were tracking, you'd be able to click on this number here and go in and see all of those. And then we have overdue sales invoices. So I've done a really bad job of collecting my AR. I'm back on $159,000 worth of invoices sitting out there that our customers haven't paid. But at the same time, I haven't really been very good about paying my vendors because I've got overdue invoices on the payable side as well. Down here are just similar kinds of things. So if I were to click on the overdue purchase invoice amount, it's going to show me all of the invoices that make that up. And there's only two of them. Obviously, they're fairly large invoices. If I scroll over, I can see the amounts of those. And so this is what it's keyed on, is that remaining amount to let me know how much I've got outstanding. I'm going to go back to my original. So I'm right back here. And again, if I wanted to go out here and say, well, how many sales orders do we have in process? How many sales quotes do we have going on? How many purchase orders do we have sitting out there? I could click on any of these tiles down here. And again, it will do the exact same thing and show me all of the different sales orders that we have outstanding sitting out here. Oops. Okay, so I'm back into here. So again, this is the business manager level, and it's going to show you some key performance indicators out here. It's going to have access to some financial statement information. It's doing a mini trial balance right here to kind of let you know how things are looking. And then I can identify favorite accounts out here that I really want to keep a good track of, right? What's my cash looking like? Not so good. What are my revolving credits looking like? We're pretty high up there, and so on. So again, if I wanted to, I can kind of look at these things, and similar to above, I can actually drill back on this balance to go out there and kind of see how this has evolved to get me where I'm at, okay? I'm going to get off of the business manager version of this, and I'm going to transition over to, because we're talking manufacturing, so I wanted to go in as a production planner. So now you can see I'm looking at very different information out here because I'm the one that's responsible with controlling our shop floor. I want to be able to look at different pieces of information, see what's going on in my system, more from a production side. So I've got different types of production orders that can be created. I've got 6 released production orders. These are the things that we've taken from firm planned and said, nope, we're releasing them to the floor. And if I were to click on this, I'd be able to go in here and take a look at all the different released orders that I have out here. If I wanted to, I could drill into any one of them by clicking on it. And it just shows me the details of what the quantity was, what the due date of it is. And we're actually going to go through and create one of these. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now. I'm just trying to show you some of the basic navigation through here. Again, on this screen, it's not giving me the back button. So anytime I click my company name up here, it'll take me back to my original screen. So on any screen that you're in, if you see that, if you click on it, it will actually just get you right back to this point. As we go through the processes and look at these things, there's many ways within the system to go out here and access the data and create new data. So if I wanted to, I could actually come up to here, and I could look at sales orders from here. I could look at purchase orders from here. They're already built into the systems to kind of give me this through the menuing. These are the different kinds of production orders we can create. And so this menu lets me get into that stuff. If I wanted to go out there and look at items, which I'm not seeing through the menus that I can get in there, actually, it might be under product design. Yep. So under product design, I could go to items, or if I wanted to, I could have done our lookup feature here, and I could type in items. So right here is my items list. I'm going to click on that. And this is showing you that we've got different ways to look at our data inside the system. So this is giving me a very big tile that's showing me essentially what the item is supposed to look like as I scroll on down. It's capturing all of that, but it's also showing me the item number, what the item description is, what the current price for this item is, okay? And then how many of these I have in stock right now. So if I wanted to, I could click on any of this information. I could click onto this and it would take me into the actual item setup, which we are going to go through. So this is one of our produced items. And here's the picture again. And if I needed to, anytime I could go in here and I could re-import a different picture. If it's changed over time, I could just delete this one, whatever I needed to do. So as I scroll down through this information, what's kind of nice is it's starting to show me from an inventory perspective, hey, we generally keep these in a shelf F4 within our warehouse. If you want to be able to do multi-bin, meaning that it's in many different shelf locations throughout the facility, we can handle that. That's not a problem. This one is set up to be really basic, and I'm just identifying that we generally put these on shelf F4. Everybody, by coming in here and looking at it, would know what shelf to go look for this particular item. Quantity on hand, it's going to show me that we have 32 on hand. If I wanted to go out there and take a look at how I got to that, it would let me know that we've done some production out there. We produced 27 on one production order, and then we produced 5 more. That's giving me my total of 32 that I have on hand. Okay, quantity on production orders. So I have an additional 42 sitting out there on production orders that we have not actually gone out there and produced yet. And so this is showing me all the different production orders we already have out there set up to work with this. And then we have an additional 179 that are being identified on sales orders that we need to be able to go out there. So we're going to look at how we can satisfy this demand and go ahead and take care of that. And the system will actually help us kind of showcase to go out there and actually do some planning on our behalf and help us through the planning process rather than just going out there and manually creating those production orders. As we cruise on down in here, we can track our costing. So it's in here as standard cost. We can actually do actual cost. We can be on a FIFO, LIFO, specific, or average costing. This one was set up for standard costing. The standard cost for this bike is set up as the $350,595. If this was set up for actual costing, which would be the FIFO methodology or the LIFO, this standard cost would be a derived cost. As you go through and you continue to produce, the last produced cost would come into this as the current cost for this item. As we go on down, this is where you can control your pricing for the item. It's a $4,000 bike. It's actually, as I looked it up, more like a $2,700 bike, but this was our test data that was in the system, just so you know, so I kind of left it alone. But if I wanted to, I could actually come in here and change this to be $2,700. And now my pricing, if I go out there and create a sales order, is going to bring in that $2,700 value. This is really where I wanted to spend the time talking to you about this is our replenishment section. This is the area that I've said, this is a bike that we make. So I've set this up to be a production order, not being a purchased item. Okay. Now I could also set this up to be a transfer item. So if you have items that are getting moved between different locations, then you can set certain items up to kind of facilitate that transfer between your different locations. And you could set it up to say that this is a transfer item to take one item from one location and move it over to the other. And then assembly would be, it's similar to a production order, but it doesn't let you do any routing steps and things like that, but it does let you assemble goods. Other systems would treat these like kits. We have these as assembled items that would go out there and do it. And if you needed to, you could actually explode the assembly onto your sales order if you really wanted to show all the different components onto the sales order rather than just showing the assembled item out there. Okay. And then in our production, we have some choices to make here. And it would be, do we want to make to stock, which means we're going to kind of make them and put them on the shelf, or do we want to make to order? And so then what it wants to do is evaluate every order and help you plan against those orders. We're going to leave the set to make to stock right now. And then as we look, we can go in and look at the router. Now, I can tell you this, generally speaking, if we're talking like automotive manufacturing, when I go in and I set up my routings and my production bombs, I generally have my item being tied to the router. I kind of use the same information. Here, our routing to make a bike is technically the same one. So if I were to scroll to our next bike, what you're going to see is we're actually using the same routing number and the same bomb on each of these 3 different bikes that we're making because they're so similar. What would distinguish these would be potentially the handlebar selection, the seat selection. So technically speak, oh, this one actually has a production bomb that's more tied to this, and it might have those different items being selected in there. But at the same time, I can use the same route because we have to assemble the same pieces. We're going to assemble the same front wheel, the same back wheel. We're going to assemble the chain assembly in here. And those are set up as sub-assemblies as we kind of go through some of this stuff. So again, if I wanted to go look at this production bomb, I have multiple ways that I can get there. One would have been off the front screen. I could have gone in and looked at all of my production bombs and then selected this. But since we're already here, what I want to do is I'm going to use our drill down here. And I'm going to highlight this, tell it I want to select from the entire list of all my bombs. And then I want to basically edit this one. So I want to manage it and I want to edit it. So I just drilled back to the bomb. I'll show you a different way from the front screen, how we could have gotten here a different way. If you know what you wanted to go do, you don't have to start at the item level and get back to the bomb. So in here, this shows you all of the different pieces that come together to make this bill of materials into a bike, okay? And in here, we do have some sub-assemblies. So if we wanted to, we could come into here, more options, actions, function. No, I didn't want to copy, sorry. Oh, that's a discussion later. Sorry, clicking a little more than I wanted to. Wanted to get to, oh, another thing that we can do in here is our where used. So here I am on my wheel, front wheel. So if I came up to my components, I could use my where used, and this is going to show me all the bombs that this item it gets used on. We can also do the where used from the item card, and we can see how much is needed in each of these things. So from that perspective, we've got lots of different things that we can do. Let me back out of here now, and I'm going to back out of my bomb. And then I want to go into the routing. One more thing about production. You can actually create a production item without a production bomb associated with it, but every bomb has to have at least one routing in it. And so I'm going to go in here and basically I'm going to do the same process. And I'm going to go in and take a look at our, excuse me, our bomb for this 1000 workflow or routing process. So in here, this is basically the steps that we walk through to build out our bike. So step 1 is going to be going to Work Center 100, and it's going to be the wheel assembly, and it's going to take 110 minutes of setup time to get this thing going, and then it's going to be 12 minutes as the run time. That's the standard that's out there. And then as we go into Work Center 2, process 2, that's going to be done at Machine Center 120 with a setup time of 15 minutes and a run time of 15 minutes. And then so on. We've got final assembly. And then there's going to be a control, which is basically quality control. It's going to be 10 minutes to set it up and 8 minutes to go do this. We can also track wait time. So maybe after each item that you're building, there's a bit of wait time as you're resetting something. We can put in some wait time in there. And then there's move time. As I'm moving from one process to the next, I can actually put in here that it's going to take us 15 minutes to get it from one side of the building to the next. I can build that move time into my routing steps. And then lastly is we can do routing links. And what routing links is set up to do for you is to go out there and actually assign certain component items to the routing step so that you could go out here and basically track if you wanted to, and you were doing one routing step at a time for your consumption, you'd then be able to say, I've completed this for this production order, and it's going to recognize the consumption of just those items that are associated with this routing link code in here. And then our fixed scrap quantity or a percentage scrap, because of what we're doing here with units, we would probably have a fixed scrap in terms of, hey, if we had to turn a bunch of things as one of our routing steps, and it's going to go through a CNC or a lathe, and we actually have to consume one of these, then maybe what I end up with is I scrap one, and then I get a good quantity of one back on my routing or my production BOM, but we would be able to then go out there and track that scrap as the lathe is trying to get ready for the first one and it doesn't quite tool it right. We would be able to consume that as a scrapped quantity right within this routing step. So I will back up one step back again. And I want to go back into my production BOM. Since I introduced it, we're going to go back in there one quick second here. And I want to edit it. There we go. Love demos. There we go. I just brought you here. What I didn't show you on that is the routing link code gets added to each of the component items off to the right. I'll come back a different way to our BOMs and we'll see if we can get it to open up a different way here. For some reason, it's being a bit persnickety. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this for a second. So we have multiple items that are being set up with these routings. And then you can also track your rounding precision in here. Technically speaking, because we're dealing with pieces, this should actually be set to a 1, not to a 0.001. I had somebody that was making board feet of foam, and there they needed it to go down to a precision level of this kind of stuff. You've got different flushing methods you can do. It's set to manual, but you can do forward flushing, back flushing, pick plus forward, or pick plus backward. And the idea would be is if you're going to forward flush, when you go out there and you release a production order from firm plan, let's say, upon releasing it, it's going to go out there and actually start to consume your components. If you're backward flushing, what happens is when you go into the production order and you post the production order, the consumption and the output, it will consume those items as at the time that you hit the post on the production order, okay? So I'm going to back out of our item card. And the last thing I really want to point out is it's a really visual system. It looks nice with these pretty pictures in here and everything. And what's nice is you can see a lot of that information we just looked at by highlighting just one of these, and it's going to run down and show you all of that same information we just discussed, as well as a lot of the planning information that's going on in here, okay? One of the things I forgot to mention in there was when we're doing a produced item, let's go back to a bike. And I'm in the replenishment section, right? Down in here, when I'm doing it, I also have lead time. How long does it take us to produce one of these? Maybe our lead time is it takes us 1 week to produce a bike, then I can put that in there. And the idea would be is the system takes all of these lead time calculations into consideration. So if I were to scroll over to one of the other items in here, so let's say that we buy, well, actually we produce this wheel. Let's say this rim, we purchase this, and maybe it's being produced in China, and it's going to take us 4 weeks or 6 weeks to get in here. When we go out here and we start to run some of our planning worksheets, it's looking at all of the lead times for all of the items. It's looking at all of the lead times on all of your produced items. And it's saying, hey, on this sales order, the customer says that they want this by a particular date. And if you go out there and actually did the planning off of that, it's going to look at it and say, okay, you need a week to produce this bike. You need 4 weeks to get the rim in. And it's going to help you try to schedule out your production as well as your purchase orders based on all these planning things. And so something might happen if I go out here and say, hey, you wanted to produce this and it takes you 6 weeks and it wants to go back in time because I'm playing in a demo environment and I might be creating a situation where I don't even have that stuff in stock. to be able to go out there and actually do this production order. So suddenly it wants me to start producing purchase orders back in time. If you're doing it on a proactive basis, obviously that doesn't happen to you in your real world. We're in the make-believe world here. So I'm just kind of warning you. So I'm leaving it with no calculated lead time, which means it wants to go out there and actually create a production order as soon as it finds demand for it. But it would use all of this on all of these different configurations to ensure that you can build the bike in time and get it, and get it out to your customers by their requested ship date. Okay, so I'm going to back out of the item card. We're going to back out of here. And now here I am back at the beginning of all of my stuff. So that's a lot to cover in there. I didn't actually discuss the difference between your work centers and your machine centers. So quickly, a work center can be comprised of multiple machine centers. So again, I had somebody who was building out foam planks. They had a work center to go out there and do some of those aspects because it was just a continuous production of it. But then when it came to cutting, they actually had 3 different saw machines that were working. And so we set those up as individual machines that was related to a work center called cut. But each of the cutting machines then would be like cut machine 1 or saw 1, saw 2, saw 3. And so that gives you increased production capabilities because now within that work center, I have 3 different avenues that I could send my production through to kind of go out there and complete what I need to happen. And then it does track capacities in there against the work centers and the machine centers. It'll look at your scheduled calendar, and you can set up in the calendar that you create. We work Monday through Friday, or Monday through Saturday. We work 9 to 5, and it'll show you all of the hours available, and it gives you a calculated capacity for each day. And then as you go through this and you start to schedule your production orders out there, it starts to draw against that capacity, right? Hey, if it takes me 4 hours to produce this and that work center has 8 hours available, it's going to show you the equivalent minutes, because we set everything up in minutes, of 4 hours or 240 hours being subtracted from the 480 hours it has available to go out there and do this. So you could go out there and you could review your work centers and your machine centers and actually see if you have an overcapacity kind of a situation. As we plan, it tends to run on an infinite, like you have unlimited capacity, and that's how you can go out there and create that situation where you might be overcapacity in some of those areas. So again, we've gone over to go out there and create the items, to go out and create the bills of material. So again, from here, I could go to product design, and I could have just come in this way and said, I want to look at all my production bombs. And now I see each of the different ones that I have created out there, okay? So this would be just a different way, a quicker way. If you knew what you were trying to get into, this is where we started. While I'm in here, we can actually track different versions of it. So let's say that we went in here and we wanted to go out here and actually create a new version of this. We can do that. The system will go out here and copy the bomb into it, and then I could change the pieces that needed to. Maybe now it takes 2 of these things, which is silly because it's the chain assembly, but I could just change quantities as needed. We're not going to put the lamp on. We don't actually have mud guards, so I'm going to remove these, and I could make this be my touring bike maybe, and that's the version that's out there now. And then you can actually do a matrix per version to go out there and see the different ones that are out there. I don't think I have any that were already created out here. I don't. And what you would see is here's the 01 version, here's the 02 version, let's say, and it would show you the different quantities to see what was different between the 2 versions that you've created. Okay? So we're going to continue on from there. And again, if I get back to my main screen, when I wanted to, I could have come in from here, and I could have gone in and looked at my routings from here. Okay. As I come back into this, notice I also have some of these other things that are built into this. So if I wanted to, I could have created a shortcut right into here rather than going in and saying production design. And if I were to look at my production bomb, I can actually use this little marker here. It's called a bookmark. And what it does is it puts it back on my front screen. So this bookmark works for you on any screen that's out here. And so now when you start to look at it, I've got lots and lots of different things that I've added, but that's where I just added that bookmark right here. And so from here, I could have just clicked on this rather than going through production design, production bombs. It's just going to be presented to me right on the front screen there. So it's, you know, up to you guys what you want to do. The other thing to note would be is as you get into some of these production reports and things like that, you can actually create the bookmarks for those as well and drop them on your front screen. So maybe not having this one show up here would be a benefit. So I could just unmark that bookmark. And then as I go back into that front screen, I would actually see that that's been dropped off of my shortcuts now. Okay. So now we have to discuss how do we get production going into the system here based on all the information that we've done. So one quick thing I'll go into first is I'm going to go in and look at my sales orders. So on a sales order, we can go out there and it says on here that the Canon groups asked us to send them 5 pool bikes. I had my silly one in there. It was supposed to be the racing bike. I didn't change it in this environment, sorry. Then if we go into sales order number 1002, right? This one's ordering 2 of the racing bike. It did have the recognized racing bike here. And then 25 of the racing bike and 25 of the regular standard bike. So this sales information gets aggregated out in our system, and it could go out there and help you get production orders created. I'm going to show you the planning worksheet functionality in a little bit here first, but we're going to actually go out here and go the long way and actually create production orders and discuss the different versions. So you have technically 4 different production orders that can get created within our system. There's a simulated production order. What all this is doing for you is if you came into here, somebody's asking you, how much is, you know, one of your bikes costing these days? I could go into my simulated production order and actually create a quantity of one and go out there and run it. And it'll tell me what my current cost of what this bike's going to be, especially if I'm running actual costs through here. It'll give me my current costs. Let me see what it cost the last time I did it. Hey, they're looking to order 100 of these. Okay, well, my simulated production cost of that's going to be this. Maybe we can offer them some sort of discount if we wanted to. So you could play around with your simulated production orders to go out there and kind of look at certain things. As you start to want to plan your orders, you could call them planned production orders, and you could create one at this level. And the idea would be is maybe you're going to plan a bunch of things out 6, 8, 10 weeks. So maybe you want to start out as planned production and then kind of work it from there. Or you could just start in and say, hey, I want to do firmed planned production orders. And I'm saying we've got pretty good estimates out there. We're tracking all of what we've got in terms of sales orders and maybe a forecast against this. I want to go out here and actually create some firm planned orders, review them, and then I would take those and turn it into a released order. So the general thought is if I start here, I could take a simulated, I could change the status into a planned, I could then take that planned production order, turn it into a firm planned, I could take that firm planned and turn it into a released production order. But just so you're aware, you could technically take a planned order and turn it right into a released order. It's not like you're forced to follow these procedures and go all the way through each of those processes. It's up to you which way you want to handle things. And then the final status of any of these production orders, it's technically the 5th, but it's not one that you do anything with, is as I produce my released production orders and I've done my consumption and I've done my output, I could then turn this into a finished produced order, and it will go out there and actually solidify all of your costs against this. The danger of the finished production order is, and the general guideline for this would be is, I don't know that I would post my released production orders today and immediately turn it into a finished production order, unless maybe I'm the shop floorman doing this and I do know my processes and I do know that these things actually got produced. What do you mean? So let's say that we're going out here and I'm going through all my released production orders as they're being sent out to the floor, and I tell the system that, hey, we produced an entire order. I produced 500 of something, and it turns out that the shop floor actually only produced 200 of those today. They didn't get quite through it, and we hit the end of the day. And if I tell the system that I produced 500 of them, I'm in a situation where the system thinks I've got more of those available I could go out there and sell. And so from that perspective, our quantities in inventory are inflated. We've decreased all of our raw materials. We've increased our output goods, our finished goods, and sales thinks that they can sell 300 more of these than they actually can. We don't have those on site because maybe there's a second shift that's going to go out there and fulfill orders, and sales has that prep to say, go out the door. And second shift's going to come in and go, what do you mean? I can't fulfill these 300. We don't have them in stock. So if it's not finished, I could actually go in there and do a negative 300 against my production because I produced 500. I thought I had produced them all, when in fact I didn't. I could do a negative 300 production order to set me back to the 200 that actually got produced. If I immediately finish, I lose the capability to go back there and make an adjustment like that. So in those situations, I've told people, maybe wait 2 or 3 days. If you're unsure for an entire week, I had a customer that was that way. They didn't know for a week for sure because they were still just getting used to things and transitioning from their old processes to their new. And so from that perspective, we had them hold those open a little bit longer than we normally would have. But the idea would be is when you know that this is officially good stuff, you want to go through there and actually finish out those production orders, those released orders that are sitting at a produced state. So let's go in and start in a very manual way. We're going to go in and I'm going to create a firm production order. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. And here's the ones that I have. I'm going to tell it that I'm going to create a brand new one. So if I tab off and I've set my system right, it's auto-generating the next firm planned order based on the number series set up in my system. And then the easy way to get this description filled in is if I just come in and I key in the bike, it'll backfill my information for me automatically. Then I can come in and tell it that I want to produce 2 of these and then tab off. What's my due date? Today is I'm working in 1/27 of 2022. Why? It's a demo box that I'm working off of that Microsoft gave us, and they put us 2 years out. Some of the demo boxes we have actually have us working in 2019 still. So I'm sticking with the date parameters so that all of the other items that I've got going on in the system as we go out and try to schedule. Oh shoot, my work time did not start automatically. So this is a required field. And of course, that's sitting here on today's date. So we're going to put this back to 1/27 of 22. And we're going to set that to, and that just messed up my date here. So I'm going to set it back here. Okay. So now I said that I want to go produce 2 of my bikes. I'm making this a firm planned order. And then what you want to do is you'll click process, refresh my production order. It goes out and it says, well, what do you want to bring in? I want to bring in the lines, I want to bring in the routings and my components if needed. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So what this has done is it says, you want to go out here and produce this item number for this quantity. And then if I wanted to, I could come into here, highlight this row, I can click on line, and I can go look at my components. And it's going to show me everything that it needs out here, okay? And this is showing me just the BOM quantity per out here. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, in there was the expected quantity. So let me go back there. Off to the right. And so we're producing 2, so it's expecting us to consume 2 of these. If I knew one of these was going to get messed up in the process, I could technically go ahead and change that quantity and then go through and build this whole thing out. It's also at this line level how you're able to go in here and actually build something without a production BOM, because I could go into here and go to the components and I could drag out into here all of the components that I needed. Maybe I wanted to add something else in here. I could actually add it into this production order because now this is asking for the quantities that we would need. It uses the BOM to bring this in, but I could add anything in here, put a quantity of whatever, and then it'll do the expected quantity out. So it's at this level that you can actually build something from scratch without actually having the BOM produce this screen for us, okay? So now if we want to go ahead and produce this or process this and switch it over to a released, right? This is where we can come into here and I can just change the status. So now it says, well, what do I want to change it to? A firm planned, a released, or a finished? So if this was a planned production order, then I would get to choose, do I want to change it to a firm planned or a released or a finished? So depending on where you're starting from, that's when you see the different types of options about what you can do. So again, I could have taken something from a planned production order and turned it right into a released without having to keep coming through these status changes. It asks me for, my posting date. If I wanted to update my unit cost, I could do it right here. I'm going to leave it set to blank because we're using standard. And then I'm just going to say, yes, I want to go ahead and turn this into a released production order. Okay. So now this has been turned into a released production order. There's a couple of different ways that we can go out here and actually start to record production against this. Okay. So now if I come into this, and this is actually a different, I'm back into firm plan, my bad. So let me back out of my firm plan stuff. And I want to come now into production orders and I want to go to released production orders. So now this one down here should be the one that we just created. That is not it. What happened to it? Sorry, this is the one that we just created. And there's our quantity too. So if I wanted to, I could come down into here. Sorry, clicked the wrong button again. My bad. I could click on line. And so producing goods in the system can be as simple as this. I can come into my lines section of my production order. I can click on line and I can go into production journal. And this shows me everything that it wants to consume, all of these different items and the quantities to consume. And then it shows me all of my work centers. So now I could come right into here and I could put in my actual setup times, my actual run times, and then it's showing me my quantity output as well. So this is consuming my raw materials and then creating my finished good item when it's all said and done through all 4 of my work centers. Okay, so this is one way to do it. I find this to be the easiest way to do it, depending on what you're doing. Now, we do have some ISV solutions that work very nicely with our manufacturing and our distribution. And so I will put in a plug for InsightWorks. If you're a system that says, hey, we want to barcode everything, we want to use guns out on the floor so that we can go out there and track all of this stuff, we want to actually do consumption at each of our work centers, then leveraging a ISV like that will help you walk through those processes. You would use a different production process than this one, but literally you would be able to come into here and hit post, and I just tell it to post. Or I could post and get a printing of the posting, or I could just print the work instructions that I got here and everything else. So the point would be is, it is as simple as coming into here, just reviewing everything, making sure everything looked good, and hitting the post button. I'm going to walk away from this one so that we can actually go and look at other ways that we can go out and do the posting of this. Okay. So I'm going to back out of here and I'm going to go back to my home screen. And I want to go now and look at my consumption journals. So I can click on consumption journals, and in here, I can go create a consumption journal. I can click, I want to calc my consumption. I can tell it that I want it for a particular production order. So we're going to go click on the one that we just looked at. And then I'm going to go out here and say, okay, calculate my consumption order. So now what we're looking at is here's all of my, here's my document number, right? This is the production order that we created. Here's all of those items that we were just looking at. And again, if I needed to, I could change my quantities to whatever I needed to. If there was something that happened, I could add something into here at that point. But again, it's bringing in all my unit amounts and everything for all of these goods. And then what I would do here is I would just basically go out here and post. Notice there's no output in here, okay? I'm going to back out of this. So again, it's a simple post. And now I've posted my consumption. Okay. If I'm on a gun, I could have done it through there to say, I'm finishing my last process. I want to go out and consume this. And boom, it's now in there as finished goods, and it'll post and you're off to the races. Sorry, it'll consume at that point. Here in the output journal, which is what I just had in my head, I can go out and do a similar thing. I go out, not that, do my production order, sorry, explode routing. Done. That's what I wanted. Here's my bike. I can bring in each of my operations individually, and I can go up. Sorry, I made a mistake. But what this is going to do is it allows me to go out here and track all of the outputs against each of my processes, and it's going to let me track all of my units of measure, my quantity output, and everything else. I created a oops here, so I'm going to back out of here for a second. But this works pretty much just like your consumption journal. It becomes your output journal of the finished product that you were just working on, and it should have shown me all my work centers, and I get to go out there and do the other side of it just like we did in that production journal. Okay. And again, the benefit of doing some of the ISV versions of this, it would allow you to track actual time. So you could have somebody saying, I'm starting on this production order, and it will now track all of their time as they're going through. Hey, how long did it take me to produce these two units? It'll go ahead and track that. As I say, I've completed step one. I've done the wheel assemblies, and I'm going to mark that using this ISV solution, and it'll track all of the time I spent to create those first two wheel assemblies. Then when it goes to the next routing step, which is the chain assembly, it'll go out there and say, oh, now I'm starting on the chain assembly at option or routing 2, and it's going to start tracking this person's time against creating the chain assembly and actually capture all of that into the system for you so that you don't actually even have to type in that information. It will go through and do those things for you. So again, it's kind of handy. It helps you through your process to go out there and understand, hey, we're selling these bikes. The guns can tell them where they're located throughout if you're doing multi-bin, and then they can go grab one of those as they go through the processes, okay? I did not set this up on any of these to do a item tracking like a serial number or a lot number, but when you're going through either in your consumption entry or even through the production journal, you would be able to go to the line level and do your item tracking. And so let's say that this item right here, that's a bad one, we'll do the wheel, and say that this wheel actually has a serial number on it. I could go here, use my item tracking. It's going to tell me that this one's not set up to do that, but it would allow me to then go in there from my inventory, tell it which serialized wheel that we were consuming during this production, or which two in this case, because this was set up for 2. But I would go into that before I went in and produced this good, because then it'll take those serialized goods out of your inventory. So again, if you do serial numbers through your processors, this system can handle it. And again, it does it at the landline. And again, doing it at the more generic step of doing it through the production entry, you would be able to do the same thing on those. If I were to go into my production order, go to the released, on this one here, again, when I went into the line, I would be able to come into item tracking first, go in there and tell it which line item I needed to track against it. Then I would come back in and do my production journal. Okay, so if you're doing serial or lot tracking, that's how you can deal with it. Okay, so now I've shown you very manual ways to go out here and actually start to do these things. Right, we've gone in, we've created items, we've gone in and we've created production orders. We've transferred production orders between the different types, and then we've gone in and shown you how to actually do the production posting against this stuff. The last processes in here that actually make it go easy, right? If we can't walk, if we can't understand how to do these things manually, then trying to go in and do this in an automated way can get very confusing. So what we're going to do now is I want to go into my planning worksheet. So I can come into my default planning worksheet, and with any luck, it's going to go out there and run for me. You put in your starting date, you put in your ending date. I'm putting it before, I'm actually in 127 right now. I'm trying to capture anything that might have gotten missed in the past, as well as, I'm saying that, hey, certain items take 6 weeks to come to me. Then I want to make sure that my ending date is pushing me out far enough that it could go out there and look at those demands and go, oh, we better get an order placed for some of these wheels because it's going to take us 6 weeks to get this. And so you want to make sure that your planning end date goes far enough. The general rule is you want it to be the longest time frame of whatever that planning time to receive is on each of your items. So if it's 8 weeks, you want to plan out at least 8 weeks, if not more. So again, mine was set to 6 weeks. I've actually pushed it out to closer to 8 or 9 weeks, and I'm okay with that. I'm also saying if I wanted to, so remember I said I can have this based off of just sales orders or sales, I think it's sales quotes and orders, or I can also bring in a forecast. So just to showcase what a forecast looks like is if I go out here and I could say that I want to look at this 2022 forecast, I'm going to edit the list. This allows me to go out and build a forecast. Sorry, I want to edit the demand forecast. I can choose whether I look at this on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, or even a quarterly basis. So I'm going to set this to month, which makes this looking at this detail a whole lot better. And I could start to go out here and schedule that I'm expecting that we're going to have 10 bikes that are needed in February and maybe 25 bikes in March. And on the touring bike, I might expect 5. And on our racing bike, maybe I'm only expecting 1 or 2. But notice it actually gives you every item in your item list. Okay. Now, there are ways for you to go out here and filter some of these things so that you're not seeing every item. I left it so that you could see that it pretty much brings everything in here and you can build a forecast against pretty much anything that you need to. Okay. And so what it would do is it'll take this forecast into consideration. And I believe the calculation truthfully is that it looks at your demand forecast, it looks at your sales orders, and it says, hey, you had a forecast of 25. I see you already have a sales order for 15. I'm going to assume that this is related to that forecast, and I'm only going to then forecast that you need 10 additional ones over the 25 that the forecast is looking at. So again, all those calculations can go on. I also have it turned on to show me my master production scheduling, which is going to show you that it can create you the production orders, as well as looking at your MRP to go out there and say, based on those production orders and these that we're going to create, maybe you're going to need to create some purchase orders. So it's going to run all of that at once. Now, if I have somebody that actually does scheduling on their own, they could just run MPS and they could turn off MRP. And if they're just focused on the production, or the purchasing side of things, they can have it so it's marked on with just MRP and turn off the MPS. Okay. I put in a restriction to only look at our bicycle items. There are actually other items that exist in this. It's talking about conference tables and chairs and lamps and things like that. So I only wanted to look at the things that we were talking about, which are the bike items. And so that's the range of item numbers that I have for the bike. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. The other thing I wanted to point out is what's really cool about this is it saves all of your default settings in here. And so I already ran this once before, which is why it defaulted all this information in here. So again, on an ongoing basis, now I'm at the end or beginning of February maybe. So I'm at February 7th. I could now change my starting date to February 7th really easy. I can just do a quick lookup here. It'll show me the calendars. I can advance to February, grab the 7th, and now I'm starting at February 7th, and then I can push this date out further as well. Okay. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, so that's a handy thing is most of these other things are already set up to do what you wanted. You're just looking at changing dates. If it's actually in the exact same month, all I have to do is backspace over the one digit that I wanted to change, leave all the rest of it the same, and then basically, again, go ahead and click OK. So now it's going out here and it's calculating this plan. And so now I've got all these things that it's telling me to do. These are all new action messages, okay? And it's telling me that we need to produce a production order of 75, okay? And then we need a racing bike production order to get created of 1 front wheel, because it's a sub-assembly, it's telling me that I could create planned production orders if I want to build those as separate planned orders. If I want to treat them differently and actually have them all just basically get backfilled, I could change the type on this sub-assembly from a produced order to a purchased item, and then basically what happens, it'll do the back flushing of all of that when you do the posting against your goods out here. So this is set up to say we want to produce individual production orders for each of our sub-assemblies as well. And then again, as I start to scroll down, now notice it's telling me create a purchase order for 80 and a purchase order for 75 for these mud guards, right? So it's telling me to go out there, create this new purchase orders. Sometimes what you can see is it's going to tell you to cancel something. So what it might look at is, hey, based on looking at your production orders and looking the way that the system wants you to try to go out here and do these things, it might tell you to create this production order for something and then cancel one down here because maybe this already satisfies enough quantity out there for you that you don't really need to go out there and order it. So you might get a cancel order, or maybe it says cancel of the original quantity 75. We want you to now go out there and cancel 60 of those. So we want the new quantity to be 15 out here. So you'll get all of those kinds of alerts that come on here. It's really super powerful. It's really kind of interesting that what you can do with all of this, okay? And again, notice over to the right with my fact box on here, as I'm clicking on different items, it's giving me all of the normal information that I have about what is my planning horizons, my reorder points, my reorder quantities, and such like this. And again, if we have a reorder quantity of set to 100, then every time it wants to go out there and order some of these or make some of these, it should be pushing us to 100, but I'm not sure why it's not here based on what that's in there. I'd have to go in there and review this a little bit different because there are some other things that can get set into there to make that change. So anyway, as we move on and we start to look at these items, here's all my different rims, spokes, and everything. So to get it to do these things, all we have to do is click on each of the boxes that we want it to carry out these production or whatever it's asking us to do. And then I can come into process and I can just say, carry out all of those planning actions. And all of these things would then go do exactly what it said to do. Create a purchase order or create, the production order if it needs to go through there and do the production order. This system was set up to create planned production orders, but you could also say, you know what? We have a really skinny down process. I don't need these to start at planned. I want these to start at firm planned. So instead of being planned production orders, I can set this to go in as firm planned, and then those are the types of orders that would get created automatically within the system, okay? And then I could go review everything that gets created and take a look at it. And if I'm the purchasing guy, I can look at all of the production orders, the purchase orders that got created out of this. And if I wanted to, I could even adjust those purchase orders that are getting created in the system as well. Okay, so this becomes the running portion of it, and then potentially layering in all of like InsightWorks, doing some sort of barcode scanning, doing time capture, doing production entry out on the shop floor with that. Again, gets you from the walking process of doing manual production orders and finishing them manually to being able to go out there and actually, start to do more things on a ongoing basis in real time. Okay. One other thing I forgot to point out to you, and I apologize for this, is again, when I'm doing my release production orders posting, I'm doing them one at a time. I'm going into this production order. I'm telling it to go to the line, do the production entry. When I'm doing my consumption journals and my output journals, I'm actually allowed to go out there and do it across multiple production orders. So again, when I went in there to do this one, I had actually set it up to only look for the one order that I was working on. When I go in and prepare this, I could say, find me all of my release production orders, and it would bring them all in here. And I would be able to then post against all of those by using this batch level and it bringing them in here. Again, it's part of the running after you learn how to go out there and walk, to go out here and start to produce against multiple production orders all at the same time, okay? And then there are all sorts of reports that you can run as you go into here. You can look for shortage lists, right? So it'll go out here, take a look at your production orders. I'm gonna let this be wide open, see if it'll produce. And then it's gonna show me, sorry, it's very small, all of your production orders that are out there and let you know if you have anything that's going to be short. And then it's showing you your quantity on hand right now, and it's showing you your quantity on hand after you produce, right? So I currently have 0. My remaining quantity is 15. So I'm at a negative 15 after production. I need 15 of these, right? It's letting me know my needs out there as I run this report. So there's lots of different reports that you can run to go out here and do this. You can get to them from here. And then the last thing is back into our navigation. So again, lots of different ways to do stuff. I showed you how we can go look at your bombs from starting within the item or starting out here through this. But if I knew I needed to go create a brand new bomb, I could literally click here, or a production order, I can click right here, or a new item. So I don't have to go to items, then click on the new. I can literally click here and it takes me into the items, asks me which template I want to use, and then takes me right into the item card, starting me with the next item. What do I want to call this as a description, right? Otherwise, if I was at the item list, I would have had to hit the new button to get there. Same thing with your production bombs. I know I'm creating a brand new production bomb for item 1002. So I want to call it 1002. I'm going to give it a description. I'm going to tell it my units of measure is pieces. And then I can go ahead and start to fill out my components on here and everything. So the big point I want you to understand is don't think you're going to go in to look at your list of bombs by clicking here. You would get there by coming in and saying production bomb. There's my list. Then I could click the new button, right? Or when I start here, right, I'm going directly into that screen to create a new one. I'm going directly into a purchase order right from here. I'm going to go directly in and create a routing. So it's just a bit of caution, right? Again, here I could go look at my released orders. So I could go the route of clicking on my released production orders there. I could go to production orders here, go to release production orders, or I'm seeing all the different types that I have. And when I click on here, it takes me out to let me look at all of those same release production orders that we were looking at earlier. Okay. I wanted to say thank you to everybody. Manufacturing is a very big area, and you could probably spend an entire day to really go through it. And we were just trying to immerse you in it today to kind of give you the idea of what the flow is, to understand that there's a lot of tools in there that can help you through those things if this is something that you're interested in going into. So I, again, thank you very much for your sitting through this, and I hope you learned something today. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if you do have any questions or need additional information, you can always reach out to send us an email, either emailing Tom at tjablonski@maynardsolutions.com or myself, and that's kwatts@maynardsolutions.com as well. So feel free if you have any questions to reach out to us. Thank you very much, Tom.